Welcome to GAD World. We're joined by Daniele Rizzolini, Director of Ardian Infrastructure. Daniele, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
So tell us about Ardian's approach to digital transformation.
Ardian is one of the leading infrastructure fund managers. We have invested 60 billion in motorways, airports, oil and gas sectors in Europe, Americas and Latin America. We have started looking at digital transformation several years ago, doing a workshop with management, meeting with startups, doing events and conferences. And what we think is that you need to do digital transformation by involving external advisors that help you think out of the box. Last year, we've published a research that is called the augmented infrastructure. So sort of how an infrastructure should look like by going beyond its physical limits to reach out to the users. And this research is available on our website, and it can be a useful tool for anybody at this conference to think about what is the infrastructure of tomorrow.
I've read that actually, it's really interesting report.
Thank you.
So tell us more about what role can infrastructure play in the environmental impact issues.
So it's been on the topic today on several panels. There is a climate urgency and there is a need to fight emissions, carbon emissions. Today it is thus very important that each airport invests in the capacity to collect the data, analyze this data, and think of ways to reduce the emissions and how technology can help in reducing emissions. So for example, in one of our airports, instead of building a new terminal, we tried to find ways to better use the existing one. And this was against our financial interest. Normally, the regulation will say you do capital expenditure, you do capex, you get more regulated asset base, you get more revenues. That was the typical financial thinking. Mm-hmm. Instead, this time we thought, okay, but from an environmental point of view, why isn't it better to use much better to have a more fluid user system, have more fluid security checks and so on, so that with the existing infrastructure we can have more passengers. And that's where we think that we can really play a role by leveraging this experience with other airports in our portfolio and by leveraging this vision with other management teams.
And as a shareholder of several airports, how is Ardian contributing to the global emission reduction initiatives?
So, as a long-term investor, we want to contribute by having each airport do something. We have to decrease emissions by 20-30% in the next 10 years. We need to do 2% per year. Every time, a little thing. Once it can be to optimize the taxiways in the runways so that there is less taxi time for the airplanes. Another time it can be to think about the lighting and to have it managed by an artificial intelligence that can turn on and turn off depending on the sun, on the weather, and depending on the people that will be there or not during certain times of the day. And likewise, we can anticipate the air conditioning and the temperature of the building on the terminals, depending on the amounts of travelers that will be there. So these are all small things that we can contribute 1-2% reduction globally, but if you do them on a regular basis, then you will get to what is looking now as an impossible objective for reducing emissions by 30%. So this is what we really want to contribute as a shareholder.
And what is Ardian's long-term conviction on airport investments?
So we think the airport sector is a long-term value creation sector. But airports need to invest in technology, need to invest in environmental consideration, and need to invest in their neighborhood and all the stakeholders. So for taking this into account, we are putting also tools to the disposability of the airports we invest in. And we have a tool on our website that's called aircarbon.com that allows management teams to assess how their decision will change their carbon emission profile in the future. And so this is what we think will allow us to create long-term value creation with each of our management teams in each of our companies embracing the long-term sustainability and the long-term license to grow that each airport should have, because we are in the end doing a public service.
Daniele, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.